Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
I am Barbara Hubbard.
Mark Campana,
Ted Heineck,
Skip Richmond,
Nick Miller,
Joshua Knight,
Darren Rosen,
Brian Hill,
Greg Wolf,
Darren Zimmerman,
Scott Jampino,
Jason Bernstein.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101, the greatest podcast in all the land.
This fall, coming to a conference near you. Two legends meet face to face. Activists Bernie Cahill, Emporium presents Dan Steinberg, Billboard Live.
Bernie Cahill here. I'll be doing the keynote with Dan Steinberg at Billboard Live, Montage, Beverly Hills, November 13th.
Welcome, friends, to episode 99 to the world-famous Promoter 101 podcast.
We've got an excellent episode ahead for everybody here this week. Episode 99 is going to have CAA's Brian Hill breaking down the world of concert touring.
Plus, Jam Productions' Nick Miller talks about booking some of the hottest venues in the country.
And we've got 3 questions with Live Nation's Brad Domash.
And the news of the week with me, Dan Steinberg, and my good friend, Luke Pierce, who's back this week from his long tour of the UK. Welcome back, Luke.
It's good to be back, Dan. I was actually in Oslo and Stockholm for the start of a tour over there. Never been to the Nordic countries. Pretty beautiful place, man. Good to be back, though. And Dan, I've got to take a moment to congratulate you this week before we get started. You had an amazing cover story on the new edition of the Polestar Talent Buyer Guide, a fascinating story. You're always asking the questions, and in this moment, you're actually opening up and talking a little bit about yourself. It's truly the first interview I can remember of you being the subject of, other than maybe the Larry LeBlanc hot seat, which is also a great read about you. So got to learn a few things about you this week personally, Dan. And Debbie Spear, credit to her for doing a great job telling her story about a nice little Jewish boy who likes promoting concerts from Denver.
Thanks, man. It was a little weird to be on the other side of the hot seat on that one. Debbie did a great job, like pulling all the way back to my early high school days and talking about early on in Denver. So that was a lot of fun to talk about those stories and see some of those old pictures and remember of, when tickets shouldn't cost more than a 6-pack of beer. So that was fun. Big thanks to Debbie. It's really an honor to be tapped from Polestar for that.
And well deserved, man. Everybody's got to check it out. We share this article all over our socials. We tweeted about it. You can find it there or on the front page of Polestar.com, or pick up the new directory, Pieces of Paper. They still exist if it's out there.
This is Andrea Johnson from ICM Partners, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
You can listen to Promoter 101 pretty much anywhere now.
We're all over the place. Wherever you podcast, we're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio. We're on Spreaker. We're on Stitcher. We're on YouTube. We're on SoundCloud. We are everywhere. Wherever you listen to podcasts, please be sure to subscribe.
Hey, you can follow us on Twitter. Luke is W. Luke Pierce. I'm the Jew. The show is Promoters 101 or just Promoter 101, whichever you like.
Keeping it going with the plugs this week, Dan. We got some more news. It's been a moment since we've done any sort of public Promoter 101, a live taping, but that changes today as Dan, you got tapped to moderate the keynote this year's Billboard Live Music Conference at the Montage. But in the nice digs, Dan, in Beverly Hills on Tuesday, November 13th, you'll be interviewing activist artist management's Bernie Cahill. This guy's had an incredible story this year, breaking out to form his own shop. Very exciting stuff happening on that stage.
I can't wait to talk to Bernie. I mean, the success he's had with Dead & Company and exiting Roar, Bernie is just a monster in the industry. And to go from being a lawyer to being a manager, man, there's a lot to talk about there. And he's just a great guy, and his heart's in the right place. Activist is the name of his company, and the spirit that he looks at the world. He really is just that kind of guy, and I'm fascinated by him.
You have to be sure to check it out. We're going to be recording the podcast live for a future episode of Promoter 101 for those of you who can't make it to the conference itself in Beverly Hills, so stay tuned for it.
Want to tell us something? Reach out to us at Steiny at promoter101.net.
Lucy Lawler-Freese, Rival Entertainment and the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on Promoter 101.
If you missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week, we feature a classic reissue of episode 56. Luke, why is it a classic?
It was an excellent episode featuring one of Music City's heaviest hitters. WME's Jay Williams came on the podcast. He is one of the biggest agents in the world of country, handling names like Dierks Bentley, Luke Bryan, Eric Church, and Chris Stapleton. Had some amazing insight to that world.
Plus, United Talent Agency Eddie Clemens talks to us about rolling out the Guns N' Roses tour, among other things. A really great guy when it comes to brain and marketing. We love Eddie.
We also had then Billions Corporation agent, now WME agent, Adam Voith, turning the tables on you, Dan. 3 great questions there that came out of that.
Do you think maybe that the deal for him at William Morris came from him and Jay being on the same podcast? And they're like, hey, you, maybe. Don't forget to drop us a review, subscribe to Promoter 101. It's free, and we need your approval for God fucking sake.
Please, I need you to like me. I need you to like me.
I want you to like me.
I want you to want me. Hey, Cheap Trick played with Delta Ray last night at the Revival in the Basement, for those of you here in Nashville.
How did that go, Luke? Congratulations on signing them, by the way. What great news. Delta Ray, At Works Entertainment, Luke's on point. This is big.
Yeah, very pumped to be working with such a talented group of artists. This is a band that I've followed since Livy Tortella and Julian Raymond had them at Warner's, and now they're here in Big Machine in Nashville. And last night they opened up the first night of a 16-week residency at the OG Basement, the basement down on 8th. They've had 30-something special guests already confirmed it last night. They had Cheap Trick come out and play a few songs with them. They had Kerry Wellington out. Sold-out show, great crowd. I got to check it out. I've got to give a plug to anyone in Nashville that would like to come out and check out this band. They're fucking phenomenal.
You're not supposed to get high on your own supplies, sir. That's the first rule in Scarface of drug dealing. And music is my drug of choice, sir.
It is indeed. But getting high on my own supplies and okay when it's that good.
This is Arielle Hyatt from Cyber PR on the Promoter 101 podcast.
News of the week.
Time for the news of the week, Dan. Kind of a slowish news week coming out of the Labor Day holiday this weekend, but something coming out of the school of producing festivals is hard. Another cancellation of a festival in St. Louis due to some liquidity issues. The 9th year festival, that's Lou Fest in St. Louis, was set to be happening this weekend, but canceled just days before the festival was set to begin, and headliners were to include Robert Plant and Modest Mouse, not a small festival, and again, this is supposed to be the 10th edition of it. The festival organizer, Mike Van Hee of Listen Live, said, "It's sad to announce that Lou Fest has been canceled. We know this is a great disappointment to the many who have been wide speculating around our event." He went on later to say that there are problems with artist contracts and bailing sponsors, which stressed the balance sheet, but that Frontgate, the Live Nation ticketing company, would step in to handle all refunds while they cleaned up their debts. And I'll say, admittedly, it seems like the ambitions of Lou Fest this year seem really large. And while I'm disappointed to see another cancellation, that's not the greatest thing for the health of our business, Dan. We can at least rejoice that fans are going to be covered and guaranteed by Frontgate and Live Nation.
Yeah, I also saw that Head and the Heart quickly put together another show in the market. And I thought that was really exciting.
We've had like a rough 18 months of festivals that have had some establishment going through some financial turbulence here. And I don't know whether that speaks to saturation of the festival market in America, as there are so many out there. But it seems like this game is harder and harder to compete in. And if you're not there and well capitalized for the long run with high margin sponsor machines behind you, it's a tough game to be in. Am I right, Dan?
Well, here's the thing. It's an investment. And if you're going to play this game, you need to be prepared to lose every dollar you put into the pot. And when you put up a festival, that's what you're saying to the public. We're bringing you this event, even if you're the only person that buys that ticket. It may seem a little ridiculous at times, and you may have to lose a lot of money building the brand, but that's kind of the game. And if you're not willing to do that, you probably need to step to the side and find a different field to play in.
Agreed. This is not for the faint of heart. It's not for them to capitalize. It's not something you can be an armchair passive organizer. And this is a blood and guts game. I feel like a lot of people have been lured in by the attraction of wanting to work with artists. And time again, stories like this help prove to say how hard it is even for the best organizers in the world to pull something off successfully.
Yeah, this wasn't a baby festival by any means. These guys had done this for years. They knew what they were doing. And, hopefully they'll be back because it is a good brand and great artists, great booking. But obviously the fans are going to be a little fickle about buying tickets in future years since it just didn't come off. But hopefully they find their footing again and they come back. Some quick signing news out of Music City. Scott Pochetta and Big Machine have signed Nashville star Lady Antebellum. Lady A are coming off a summer tour together with Darius Rucker and making big moves on the record side, Luke.
Yeah, they were. They had a nice little trade photo from the Big Machine Vodka Distillery here in Nashville a couple of weeks ago. That's a big signing for Scott and his whole team over at Big Machine. So got to give a big shout out to Scott, Big Machine, and Lady A for finding a great new home. Mark your calendars, everybody. The 10-cent IPO will be on October 19th. Why am I always talking about IPOs, Dan, all the time? I feel like I have no idea. But 10-cent and Spotify, should note, did a 9% swap of each other's companies. This prior to Spotify, the streaming giant, going public. So a solid IPO from 10-cent is going to bolster Spotify. And that's going to help shore up the health of the largest streaming service in the world right now, which is important to all of us, I guess. So I like pointing these little tidbits out in Luke's obscure facts and figures.
I like that.
Interesting time to be looking at the ticker spot. I would check it out for October.
This is Cindy Leinott. I work at Works Entertainment, and I'm on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we sit down with creative artist agency's Brian Hill, here to break down the world of concert touring.
Brian Hill.
Hello.
You're one of my favorite people in the world, and we're pretty close. So every instinct in the world has me wanting to fuck with you because you can do that and it would be funny, except people wouldn't see the facial expressions and it wouldn't be. Every part of me is like, we need to have a late night version of the same one or with an audience at some point. Maybe Pulsar will let us do the unrated versions, Promoter 101s that couldn't air.
We could compile a really good panel for that.
But sadly, this won't be that. You got to move around a little bit. You started at CAA.
Uh-huh.
You moved out and you wound up being at a really big, powerful indie for a while.
Yep, Monterey Artists, which became Paradigm.
And you stayed at Paradigm for a while, and then you're recently back at CAA, so your career has taken a full circle.
Right, about 3 years back at CAA. Thrilled to be back, honestly, but I wouldn't have changed the journey for anything. Looking back, I think about how I got here again, although I probably at the time wouldn't have chosen to leave, go somewhere else and come back. I'm glad I did.
Let's go through the hit list. You've got Low Cash. You've got Home Free. You've got Chase Rice, who personally, damn, that guy's a rock star.
Oh, yeah.
We can go on for a while. Frankie Ballard. The list is just monstrous.
Aaron Lewis, who is a sleeper. Eli Youngman, who I've had 15 years.
Aaron Lewis, is he a country star? Is he a rock star? Is he both?
He's both.
We had his manager on the podcast recently, Ross Schilling, and he had alluded that there was possibly a Stain reunion tour, and now I'm kind of getting the vibe that maybe that didn't work out.
As soon as Aaron's ready and his bandmates are ready, it'll get done.
So you have two acts with that manager.
Yeah, I do. I have Low Cash and Lewis.
And he's having quite the moment, Ross, because the Leonard Skinner farewell tour is doing incredible business.
I hear it's outperforming anybody's expectations. Really high ticket price, no seats unsold. I don't know the numbers because I don't work with the band, but Ross is walking around with kind of a permanent smile on his face these days.
Quite an amazing manager, but you have two acts with the same manager. So clearly there's a solid relationship there. Is that a thing when you're dealing with management, when you're picking up an act? Is you got a good rapport with the manager? Is that the first step?
Yeah, I mean, the first step with Ross Schilling in particular happened in 1994 when he and I were roommates, believe it or not. We were both assistants at the same time. I don't even know if you know this or not.
I'm a little shocked because Ross always seemed to be a little bit wilder than you.
Even then, he and I were roommates. Somebody hooked us up when I was looking for a place in Nashville. And I ended up living with Ross and this guy, Mike Strange, who was also an assistant at William Morris at the time. Mike's out of the business now. Ross and I shared one side of the house, and to say we were close would be grossly false. We weren't that close back then. We were just kind of roommates. We didn't hang out much. You know, I had a serious girlfriend at the time. I spent most of the time with her. Ross did his thing. We were friendly, but not close. Over the years, we've gotten closer. And since I've had bands with him, I've gotten to know him, and he has become a very good friend. I have a huge place in my heart for him as a person. He's an incredible father. And I'm not saying this with any amount of hyperbole, nor am I saying this because he's a manager and I have to kiss his ass. I'm saying this because it's the truth. He's really, I hate to say come a long way because I think that's talking down on it, but he's just a great guy and he's a very conscientious manager.
I gotta say, it's one of my favorite interviews that we've had on the podcast was his. He was so forthcoming and so knowledgeable, and his career isn't based on one genre of music. And it was so cool to have that conversation and have his knowledge just pour out of him. It's just like, I just didn't want it to end.
Well, here's why I like working with Ross so much. Yeah, I said he's conscientious, but I think he has a unique point of view because he was an agent. Okay. He understands the road. As an agent, when you're talking to somebody who is on the same wavelength, it just makes the job so much easier. You know, there are landmines going off all the time and you're hunkered down in a foxhole trying to get a date confirmed or trying to get your point across this way or trying to get a deal done or whatever it is. And to have somebody that understands the road inherently is great. I treasure that relationship. No joke.
Relationship business, there's no question about that. It's something we talk about over and over again. You're a guy that is firmly entrenched in Nashville. You've worked for a number of agencies there. You've been there for decades. You know the business. And a country business is kind of hard to break into in general. It's like hip hop. Either you understand the acts or you don't, but you can't speak intensely about country. It's easy to talk about Luke Bryan's hits, but to go in there and go into the B-sides of the earlier acts and know them all and appreciate the true business and talk about Dwight Yoakam's early days and truly know what that means is a whole different side of it. And the country business, truly, you need that credibility to understand the other acts, to talk about support and talk about the bills. And that's something that you're either a poser or you're not.
Right. When I got there in 94, I worked rock and roll, right, at PGA. So I didn't know much about the present day country business, right?
Pop country, if you will.
If you will. And so I had to learn it. While I was booking the rock bands, I went and I forced myself to listen to the mainstream country stations and learn by listening to recognize everybody. I'd be like, who is this? I know the song, but who is the singer?
Like flashcards, but country music.
Exactly. I was like, oh, okay, that's Mark Wells. Okay, that's Randy Travis. That's whomever, right? And I figured out who they were. So I just kind of self-taught myself. And then I would meet managers and, you know, as many people in the mainstream business as I could, not because I was planning a transition into country, but because that was the business, almost the sole business of Nashville. And I wanted to know who the players were and who my neighbors were.
You've been recognized by Pollstar a couple times as Third Coast Agent of the Year, which is really a reward from your peers. Of all of the amount of business in Nashville, for people to say, Brian Hill, that's the agent we think represents Nashville the best, you really can't get much higher of an honor.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was incredible. I mean, you know, the first time I won it, I remember driving to the Universal Amphitheater with Pete Olson and Aaron Tannenbaum from Paradigm, and we were late. And I said, they're like, you got to get there. You got to get there. You know, the awards. And I'm like, let's be honest. It ain't going to happen, but thank you. And I remember being so resigned that it wasn't going to happen. And then when it did happen, we all looked at we were sitting in the back and we just looked at each other and we were just like, how did this happen? I mean, you know, it was one of the most satisfying moments of my life winning it that first time.
The first time, but then it happened again.
Then it happened again. Just as fluky, but felt just as good.
Once was a fluke. Twice, we got something here.
Well, talk to me if there's ever a third time. You know, that's a pattern.
A collection of Pollstar awards, if you will.
Yeah, a small collection.
What in your mind makes CAA a better agency than all of the other agencies out there? In your personal opinion, and I know that you respect the other agencies, but you could have gone anywhere. When you left Paradigm and we talked.
You were a great sounding board back then, for sure.
We were rolling through things, and it wasn't like I only have one offer. You could have gone anywhere. You chose to go back to CAA. There was a personal decision that you decided that was the best agency. Maybe just for you, but you decided that was the best agency. What in your mind, I'm not putting down what is one of the top 3 agencies in the world by any means, but what makes CAA such a great agency in your head?
For me, it was heart. And without sounding politically correct or that I'm trying to get a raise or anything, I'm telling you the way I absolutely feel.
The thing that made you decide to go there, you weren't even there at the time. This is what drove you there, right?
Was heart. Well, the people. I mean, Rob Light would be the first reason. I feel very close to Rob. And when I spoke with him, the first thing he asked me was about my family. And you know this. And I feel like my persona outside of work is that I'm a family guy, right? I love my wife. I love our kids. I love being a dad and a husband. So when he asked me that, I felt like there was that instant connection. Like, this guy understands really who I am. I'm not just a booking agent, but I am somebody's husband, somebody's dad. And he gets that I'm not going to be missing a wrestling tournament, even if it's at 3:00 on a Friday. I'm leaving to go do that, and then I'll come back. To kind of tie this all up, heart the people. There were specific people in Nashville: Brad Bissell, Darren Murphy, Mark Dennis, Aaron Tannenbaum, all these guys, of course, Huey, and of course, Rod, these people that I knew personally, that I'd worked with at other companies, that I respected, and that I knew were in on what the whole thing really is. You know, they were in on the joke, if you will. Okay. They knew that life was more than just booking bands. It was the whole thing.
It's Promoter 101, but let's make this masterclass now. We've known each other a long time, and you get the business at a much higher level than most people. So let's take advantage of that. The inside of the circle, being in the loop, means getting the information before the rest of the world. And you certainly are in the loop. From CAA, from your managers, from your acts, from the promoters that you're in the circle with. But there's a trust in that you're a lockbox. Like, somebody tells you something that ain't public, no one else knows about it. And you can be trusted. That's your reputation, is you say something to you, Brian Hill will never leak a secret.
Is that my reputation?
Yeah.
All right, great.
It's a big part of the industry, being able to get somebody's opinion and advice on something, and at the same time not have that come back to bite you in the ass later. And that's something that you've been able to do. So you're a vault, but you've got all that information to be trusted, but you can use that data to know what else is going on in the industry, because that's the other side of people coming to you and getting advice, or just being a sounding board, is having the knowledge of the things, the moving pieces, what's happening backstage of the industry, so to speak, which is part of the fun, right? I mean,
sure. I mean, yeah, to have access to know things.
So you know a ton of stuff going on in the industry. I mean, just being at CAA, there's an amazing amount of CAA business that isn't public. It's the industry. And I'm not going to ask you to share corporate secrets, and I know you wouldn't anyway.
That's correct.
Would you?
No, absolutely not.
But that's a big part of the business, is trust and building that trust. Is that something that goes into the plan when you're becoming a client relationship, or is it just common sense?
So it's a lesson we all have to learn, whether you're in the business or not. It is common sense, but being able to discern what is patently confidential without being told and what is not takes a little bit of life experience, work experience. And so, you know, I learned that lesson the hard way. If I can be confessional for a moment, I got let go by CAA in 94, in part. Well, first of all, I was a terrible assistant. So let's put that out on the table.
Whose desk were you on?
Mike Peranian. But also because I said some things that were not for public consumption, not after being told so, but by not knowing that they were. And I was not smart enough or experienced enough to know the difference. And I said something, and it got back to them, and they were like, "What are you, stupid? I mean, you can't say this." And I said, "Well, I did." And they said, "Well, because of this and because you're terrible." They didn't say that, but I knew it. You know, we don't have a spot for you.
Well, that's got to be a really big learning moment.
Did you know that? Have we ever talked about that?
I knew that you left CAA. I don't know that I knew that you were not asked to stay.
Yeah. Huge learning curve. I was very bitter about it for a long time. And then when we all reach adulthood or maturity, right? For me, it was well into my 30s, maybe even 40. I was like, you know what? That was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It wasn't Mitch Rose who did the talking and let me go, but I thanked Mitch for that. And I also thanked Tom Ross, because even though it was, I thought, the end of my career 3 years in, it was one of the best learning experiences, and one of the best things that could have happened to me as a person was taking that bad experience, looking at it from the outside and turning it around and learning from it and making it a positive experience.
At CAA, you guys get a first look in a lot of cases, which is a great thing because you're not really competing against CAA now. If you and another agent are both interested in an act, the odds are you guys will go after it together because you guys have the team thing there. But you guys get a first look. So deciding what acts you're going to take on, because you've got a pretty full plate as it is right now, but getting in those meetings, deciding who you're taking on, and then the pitch. Everybody has a different process of signing acts. What's yours?
So mine is to not overpromise, okay? I believe that even a very hungry, nay, desperate artist who wants to do anything he or she can or they can to make it can discern between a bunch of crap and the truth. And if I'm telling somebody, we're putting you on this tour, we're going to put you on this tour, we're going to put you on this tour, I believe they can still tell the difference between what is false promises and the truth. So what I typically do is I say, here's what we are capable of. Here's the access we have. Here's how I'm going to get your name into the discussion. And here's the vision I have to make you, into a touring entity for the rest of your life or as long as you want to do it. And I think people appreciate that honesty. Now, you have to back things up. Analytics, heart. I tell people, I know that I'm not going to be the smartest guy in the room probably ever, but nobody will look at this with clear eyes, pure heart, and work harder for you than I and my coworkers.
You knew Scott Clayton before you came to the agency. You guys worked together earlier. So then part of your decision process of going there had to be at least affected by the fact that he was there originally. So when him and Buster left, how did that feel?
It surprised me. Scott and I are very friendly. We arrived in Nashville on the same day in 94, worked at the same place from day one. And he was very, very patient with me when I had never booked a single date, yet was an agent all of a sudden. And he had a lot of experience booking bands already. And I learned a tremendous amount from him. So when he left, and the truth is, I don't know all the particulars. I don't know the circumstances.
My understanding was there was some money involved.
It is the music business. So when he left, it was a moment of confusion. But I work for CAA, ultimately for the clients, and my direct superiors were still there. The clients were still there, and the agency is still there. So that's how I kind of reconciled it in my mind. In the grand timeline that is the music business and the life of CAA, this was a blip in the radar. I don't mean that disrespectfully to anybody, but it is. We've seen this happen. You and I have seen this happen over the 25, 30 years where people leave, it flares up and flames out.
So you think CAA will continue?
I would bet my house on it. And yours. Actually, everybody's, of course. So these things are just blips, bumps in the road. And for us, it didn't really change the day-to-day feel in the office in the long run. It happened over Christmas, so it was an odd time, right? We came back and we were like, okay, how are we going to be? And the answer was, we're going to be the same thing. We're us. We have a culture. We have our thing. Cosa Nostra.
Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Sure.
Love Brian Hill. He's one of my oldest friends in and out of the business. He's just a mensch of a guy. If you haven't had the opportunity to work with Brian Hill, I highly recommend it. And more importantly, if you have the opportunity to break bread with him, he's such a foodie. Just follow what he's doing, let him order for the table, and you will leave so happy.
I'm Lucy Dickens from ITB, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
It's the name of the show. We got to talk about them. It's Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Let's start here, Dan. When an artist contacts you directly for booking around his manager and agent, hashtag, dude, work through your people before you get me killed.
This was just classless. Dude, respect the agent, respect the manager. I hate when you try to cut a deal around them and it just makes us look like shit because it always at the end looks like we called you. Please use your people. We want to work with you, but I want to work with the people that brought me to the table in the first place. And those guys are important to me. They should be important to you. Let them do their job. And they're probably going to get you more money because they're better at it.
When you have to explain the difference between a multiplier and a divisor to the tour accountant.
I'm not meant to be a math teacher, but just trust the Excel formula if you don't know the difference between multiplication and division. But if the word accountant is in the title of your job, you should already understand that shit.
That'll do it for Tweets of the Week. Make sure you keep up with Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew.
I'm Sarah Beasley from Wolf Trap, and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's time once again for our favorite segment, 3 Questions. It's where a listener comes on and asks Luke and I 3 questions about anything they want to know and get our opinion on. The only catch is we've never heard these questions in advance.
Joining us now for 3 questions, we've got Live Nation's Brad Domash.
Very excited. From Live Nation Chicago in the booking department, Brad Domash is with us. And I'm really excited about this in particular because I got to meet him in person at the Pit at Pearl Jam the other night. Welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you're new at Live Nation Chicago. It's a brand new experience for you.
Yeah. It's an incredible team we got here, so I'm excited to be here.
Some of the biggest guys in the world in that office, led by Jason Wright, and it doesn't get any bigger than the world of Mark. Campana is 2 feet from it. Just getting to see how he drinks coffee has got to be career development right there.
Yeah, like I said, we got a great team. Mark's great. Jason's obviously amazing and one of the nicest people in the business, and Tommy and Doug, so I'm happy to be here.
Let's play our game.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the way 3 questions work is you can ask us whatever you want. We just haven't heard anything in advance.
Yeah, all right. So first one, I would love to hear your perspective on, as a promoter, how do you define your role as a promoter?
I don't think anything defines my role as a promoter. Whatever it takes to get that show on stage and produce the band's vision locally and then back on the truck, whatever it takes to go from there and back to there in between is my job. There really is no scope of what that is. But whatever it takes, I am all that stuff in the middle. I'm here to help. The concierge, the butler, or the bitch boy, whatever works for you. But like at the end of the day, I'm just there to help make that vision happen.
Number 2, if you had every aspiring musician in one room, what would you want to say to them?
No speak English.
No, but in all seriousness, if you could talk to the aspiring musicians and the people who are trying to make it big in the industry, what are some of the pitfalls you want to tell them about, or the opportunities, things you think they should be doing, or just in general, what advice would you have for them?
I just tell them to be nicer to people in general. It seems like the biggest problem in our industry is people are dicks. At the end of the day, you mentioned earlier, Jason Wright is like the nicest guy in the world, right? He got to where he was because he wasn't an ass. If you just look at the problems that happen throughout people's career, you can usually see it trajectory being in a great place until they were an ass to the wrong person. And in a lot of cases, there is really nothing stopping anybody in this world except themselves. Nobody has the energy or the time to go destroy people. It really doesn't work like that. It's just like, if you piss somebody off, you put them on your blacklist. Like, that guy's just too much trouble to deal with, or he's a dick. I'm not going to deal with that guy. And they find another way around you, to go do what they want to do. They've got their vision. They're doing their agenda. People only really think about themselves in the grand scheme of business. So it's not a matter of, fuck it, I'm going to destroy that guy. It's not like you're watching Entourage and you have that Ari Gold moment where it's like, I will destroy you. I mean, you think it for a second, but it takes too much energy. So you get off the phone and you're just like, I'm just not going to call that guy again. And I'm just going to do business with other people. So really, it's about not getting on that list of don't call. It's about being the easy guy to work with. It doesn't mean that you can't truly say to an agent, you're being unrealistic, or you can't say to a band, you're not qualifying it right. But there is better ways to say to people than just being a dick, like, haha, you're not realistic, or, hey, that's your dream that I'm now laughing at, which people do all the time. You make fun of somebody's dream and you'll shatter them. You are the dick that just laughed at their dream. It's like, be a little sensitive to like what people are going through and think about how you would have taken that if you were in those shoes. And a lot of it just comes down with being nice and how you deliver things, because you can say no without giving the gut punch.
We'll pass the message along to all my aspiring musician friends. And last, this is a heavy one, but how do you envision the live industry will evolve over the next 10 to 15 years?
The easy thing to say is there'll always be a live industry. People love the live experience. We're seeing more stadium shows than ever. The volume of traffic on the road is huge. Acts are making their money on the road. And not only that, forget the fact that there's no money on the record side of things anymore and it's all being made on the road. Forget all that for a second. Bands are fucking playing better than they ever have before. Fish is doing great sets. Dead & Company's killing it. Widespread's playing better than they have in years. You're seeing the Avett Brothers just killing it. Tedeschi Trucks is doing amazing live shows. And look at fucking Pearl Jam the other night. Like, those guys are playing 3 hours straight and just killing it and playing different sets every night in every market. They're fucking on fire. Bands are upping their game. Better shows every night, and they're all bringing it. I don't care if you're Aerosmith or Metallica or some baby band coming around the corner for the first time. If you go on that stage, you're competing with some very amazing bands, and they're all on fire right now. It's a really exciting time to see live shows, and I'm really excited about the future because bands seem to really fucking care now.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I mean, if you'd asked me 15 years ago if I thought there'd be one corporation that was dominating all of the shows globally, I would have said no. So looking at Live Nation and AEG as the entities they are now, will they still be doing what they're doing 15 years from now? It really depends. With Live Nation, it depends on the stock market and conglomerations and takeovers and how that all works. They're a very healthy company at the moment. So my guess is some form of that will be around. And if Rapino decides to continue to work that long into the future, I imagine it'll be one of the strongest companies the world has ever seen. As far as AEG, Same thing. They got one owner. He's getting a little bit older. Will he still own that company? Will it be sprung off? I don't know. So I think that's really going to affect the game, but not the players. The players will still be the players. And I think, when you're talking about the talent buyers and the big managers and the big agents, it's like you're still going to see the guys that run in the world. And I don't think that's going to be a problem.
For sure. Well, Steiny, that's all I got for you this time. But like I said, I really am a huge fan of Promoter 101. I think you guys hit the sweet spot of educational and informative, but also entertaining. So seriously, keep up the incredible work.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. And obviously there's a lack of taste there if this is what you like. But hey, good luck with your future at Live Nation. I'm sure before we know it, you will be running an office and minions under you, fetching coffee and cleaning your car, and everybody just begging to get into the room with you. I know it's coming, man, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So Brad came up to me and introduced himself to me in the middle of a Pearl Jam concert at Wrigley a few weeks back. I was stoked he did it. And, feel free to introduce yourself to me and Luke if you see us out and about, especially if you like the podcast. If you're not fans of the podcast, just keep fucking walking. But no, it was super cool that he did that. And we're always stoked to meet our listeners. It's awesome to get your feedback.
Absolutely.
This is Julia Frank from Wizard Promotions in Germany, and we're on Promoter 101.
It's everyone's favorite time, the announcement of the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Hey, Luke, this week we're honored and thrilled to be able to say that one of our friends is actually the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. It's going out to William Morris Endeavors, CJ Strock. He is the agent for Erasure and Marcus King, Blackberry Smoke, just to name a few. And he is just beloved by everyone that knows him. Clearly a great choice this week for the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
A big congrats goes out to CJ. Well deserved.
Love you, Strock, man.
Hi, it's Kim Badir with City of Tacoma Venues and Events, appearing on Promoter 101. Glad to represent all Canadians everywhere, particularly those who have landed in the U.S. of A.
In our closing interview this week, we're joined by Jam Productions' Nick Miller, here to talk about booking some of the hottest venues in the country.
We are in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm hanging out with the legend from Jam Productions. Nick Miller's in the house.
Legend in my own mind.
Or apparently mine. Dude, it's good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to do this.
You guys are one of the last true independents.
Yes, we certainly are.
There was a time and point where Bill Graham owned his market, Barry Fay owned his market, Ronnie owned New York. You guys owned Chicago and still have a really good piece of that.
Yeah, I would say that we've hung in there pretty well against a couple of 5,000-pound gorillas trying to knock us out every day.
I guess the change happened. Obviously, it was a corporate America thing when the corporations got into it, but House of Blues opened in Chicago, and they were swinging tall against the venues you guys had here, and it became a pretty big bloodbath, but it seemed like that was the first moment of the change where you guys didn't kind of have the monopoly in the market.
Yeah, they came in, and they had a build out of an old building that was brand new. They were super aggressive with offers right away, and I think they did some things that no one had really done before. They were block booking, so not only were they being aggressive in our market, they were being aggressive over a couple different markets and made those offers, part of a package deal.
Okay, so you're competing with not only loyalty, which people are pretty loyal to you and Arnie and Jerry at the time, Don Sullivan and Andrew. Like, you guys have a really solid booking team and always have. And you got a lot of loyalty and a lot of people like you guys. But when you're talking about multiple markets and really strong offers, it's kind of hard to hold on to the one market. Is that how they got able to wriggle into Chicago?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. The block booking piece was certainly there, but I think that their offers were just super aggressive right away. And I don't know if they actually made money right away. Maybe they did. I don't know. But their offers were really off the hook aggressive right away. And it was a new place to play, which acts and agents are always looking for that stuff. They're always looking for a new look, especially when you've been playing markets for years. If you've had a career for a while, you want to change it up a little bit sometimes, I guess. And that was something kind of fresh for people, I suppose.
In this market, you guys have got exclusive venues that you operate and book, and some of the coolest venues.
I think so.
The Vic historically is where a lot of the biggest comics have done their TV comedy specials shot in.
Oh, yeah, for years. I mean, even back into the 80s during the One Night Stand comedy series on HBO, that's kind of really where it all started with comedy at the Vic. And it's just really continued. But, the Vic is such an amazing room and is so versatile. You can do anything there.
The Riv is also you guys' baby?
Yes.
And that's the natural progression up.
Yes, that's the next room up.
Okay, and now you guys are opening up the Uptown, right?
We are supposed to begin restoration sometime in the next year or so, I guess.
Seems to be Jerry's love child, right?
Well, those guys did shows there for years, back in the 70s up through like 1981. Well, first of all, it's an amazing building. It's sad that it fell into such disrepair even in the early 80s, but those guys really have a love of the building. And if you've been inside of it, it's an incredible place.
It's an exciting thing, and you guys aren't giving up the market without a fight, and you guys are still doing an amazing number of shows. I mean, it's got to be, 1,000 a year, something like that?
I don't know what the actual number is.
That's probably a safe ballpark.
I haven't really
guess.
stopped to count them. I don't know if it's 1,000 a year, but it's a big number. We're constantly busy. It's funny. Two of the guys who work with me, Dave Rockin and Mike LeMaistri, and I were talking the other day about how summertime used to be kind of our quiet period.
Because everything would go outside.
Yeah, everyone goes outside. A lot of the smaller acts stay off the road because they tour in the spring and the fall, or they're on a Warped, or they're on something else. And now it's insane, like 365. The only break you get is maybe around Christmas, which is good. I mean, we have a ton of business and we welcome it.
Now, it's easy to think Jam Chicago, but that's only half the story now. You guys are deep into the Minneapolis market. You guys partnered on a new venue in St. Paul.
Yeah, that's not new, though.
The venue's not new, or your partnership
No,
there?
the venue's newly reopened. The venue's not new at all. The venue's old. It's an old building that they restored.
So you guys have just been open for like a year and a half or 2 years, right?
Yeah, but our presence in Minneapolis has been going on since the 70s.
Right.
In fact, Arnie and Jerry, one of those guys would correct me here maybe, but when they couldn't get into Chicago when they were starting out, the underdogs in Chicago, one of their markets to go to was Minneapolis because no one really cared about it. So they did shows there and kind of proved their mettle in outside markets and then doing little shows in Chicago. And that's when they were able to really kind of build Chicago even more.
The surrounding markets you guys play in as well. There's really not a bad deal you can look at so long as it makes sense financially.
That's true.
You guys are open for business. And historically, you guys were big with Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan in the summers in the secondary market ballparks. So you guys would run all over the country with that stuff.
Yeah, Don and Jerry did that stuff several years ago.
You guys are based here. It's such a large operation here. It seems like everybody attaches it to that, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah, there's more to it. I mean, Minneapolis, St. Paul is certainly a big piece of what we do. We're fortunate to be partners with the guys at First Avenue who are really awesome people and great partners. So.
And you guys still do the stadium shows here as well sometimes, right?
Yes. Just had 2 nights with the Foo Fighters a couple weeks ago at Wrigley.
Not a bad way to play the game.
No, it's good.
Seeing a market where the fight is just amazingly big here. Everybody wants a piece of it. AEG does their share. You guys do your share. There's certainly a bunch of random venues that do buying. People pop in and out. The national guys like Frank's do their stuff here. And obviously, Live Nation has a massive office and presence here as well. As an independent, is a day-to-day fight for keeping those histories and loyalty? Are you guys having to co-promote, or are you finding that some of those tour deals are just knocking it out?
Depends on what level you're talking about. Certainly, there are more tour deals at the arena level, at the stadium level, than there are at the club level.
But you're still seeing block booking from like House of Blues and stuff, right?
Some of it, yeah. I mean, not quite as much as it was in the past. It's really just a matter of, in the club world of Chicago, there are so many more venues that have kind of populated in. Some we work with, some we don't. That's really where the fight is for me every day.
So Lollapalooza is here in Chicago, which is the flagship festival, and it's C3's event. Most of the acts that play on that bill are acts that you've built in the market. Do you see that that's a good thing because they're playing in front of so many people in your market on that big event that they're marketing and then handing the baton back to you essentially? Or is that weird that somebody's got your act in your market, even if it's just for a one-day play?
I think it used to be a little weirder than it is now. When they first began the festival as a destination festival in Chicago, we took it as kind of a competitive front to us. And, we looked at it a little differently than we do now. Now that they've built it into this huge event that, in a lot of ways, I think it sells itself. I think it's one of those festivals you can announce without really announcing the acts on it. And it's going to do great because people want to be here. People like the event, and they've done a fantastic job of creating that. So the fact that bands that we've worked with from the very small level are going to go play Lollapalooza and then come back and play for us isn't really weird for us at all. It's more a matter of navigating, what does that play mean in the grand scheme of what we're doing maybe before or after it. And, a lot of the times we'll do Lollapalooza after shows. So we work with those guys. We've been doing those for years here. So
it's making the cash register ring for you anyway.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's part of the reason why summer's a little bit more busy for us these days, because of these Lollapalooza after shows. We get anywhere from, 6 to 8 of them every year, which is pretty cool. Granted, a lot of them are with bands we would have worked with anyway, but they may not have been on tour in the summertime and, been in a situation where it's an underplay. It's not a bad thing at all. That's cool.
Well, let's take a step backwards. Obviously, Jam is an amazing story on its own, but let's talk about you. You've been buying for years. How did you get into the business? How did you wind up here in Chicago at Jam?
I got into the business by accident. Well, I'm a music fan. I always have been since I was a little kid. I went to school in Carbondale. I graduated from SIU Carbondale.
So you were close.
Yeah, I grew up here in the Chicago area, but I went to school in Carbondale. And when I graduated, I got my degree in radio and television, and I came back here looking for a job in radio.
Wanted to be a personality on air?
Sales and administration.
Okay, so you're going to be on the back end anyway.
Business side of it, yeah. So came back to Chicago looking for a gig, and kind of a tough market. At the time in 1985, when I got out of college, it was probably still the number 2 market for radio in the United States. So you can imagine being some dumb kid out of school knocking on doors of major radio stations, you may or may not have a lot of luck getting a job. But my older sister actually had been in radio for a while. She worked for WXRT for a number of years.
Big station.
Yep. I'd been looking for a job and I was kind of off the hunt for a little bit. And then she told me she heard about a job at Jam Productions for their radio station. And I said, well, what radio station's that? This is kind of a brilliant thing Arnie and Jerry did. They brokered time on WVVX in Highland Park. And what they did was they created a heavy metal program for 5 hours a night from 7 to midnight, 5 days a week. They hired their own DJs who did all the programming. And this is like...
So they ran an infomercial on the radio station?
No, they hired a jock from I guess what was he at the Loop or MET, this guy Scott Loftus, and he was the jock, and they ran it like a regular radio station for their 5-hour block. And this is the time of Metallica coming up, Megadeth coming up, Slayer coming up, Maiden and Judas Priest were in arenas at that point, but there was no radio in Chicago. Nobody played them. So Arnie and Jerry went, hey, we'll do our own radio station. It'll be 5 hours a night. We'll sell all the ad time. We'll sell it to ourselves, as a matter of fact, because we're gonna
buy the shows.
We're doing all the shows. So they needed a sales rep, and that's what the job was. So I interviewed for the job with Arnie, which was pretty hilarious. The interview, he sat there. We talked for probably about 3 or 4 minutes, and then he'd take 10 minutes of phone calls and write down all these notes on my resume, sitting there. And then we'd talk for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then he'd take another 10 minutes of phone calls and write more notes on my resume. And I'm looking at this guy who brought me in. I'm like, who is this guy? What is this guy's deal? He's like, half talking to me, half doing this. But I guess he liked me, and I was dumb enough to take the job probably because it paid $0. At the end of the whole thing, he looks at me and goes, well, I really enjoyed our meeting. This is really great. I really like you. We'll be in touch. And he kind of quizzically looked down at my resume at all his notes and was like, can I? I'm like, yeah, you can take that. That's okay. That's yours. You can keep that. So they hired me. I sold radio for those guys. They're like, here's the phone book. Here's your account list. Go find advertisers.
Were you good at that?
It was funny because the first 10 clients that would come to mind, they're like, oh no, those are all house accounts. All the soda pop companies, the record companies. Obviously, the concert promoter was a house account. I actually was pretty decent at it because, trying to sell that demo in a 7p to midnight day part, 5 days a week. You walk into an agency, Foot Cone and Belding or, whomever here, Leo Burnett, and you're trying to talk to a media buyer about why they should be buying WVVX radio for whoever their client was at the time. It was tough, but I got some business done. It was funny. I was like the only guy at the company wearing a suit every day. I felt like a complete idiot.
I can't even imagine what you'd look like in a suit. I don't know. We must know each other 20 plus years. I've never seen you in anything that formal.
So I did that for a while, and at the same time I was in a band, and I had a tape, of course. I met the guy who was doing my job now at the time then, Scott Gelman. Scotty at that time was booking the Park West, the Metro, the Riviera, the Aragon. I don't think the Vic we'd not gone into the Vic yet. I don't think he was doing anything smaller. I think in the Park West and the Metro were the smallest things he was doing. But I met Scotty and, we talked. And one day I was like, I don't know if this is okay or not, but I'm in this band and I have this tape. And if you need, he's like, yeah, give me the tape. No worries. So it sat on his desk. I watched it collect dust for about 9 months. I know he never listened to it. It's pretty funny. But he and I developed kind of a friendship and a rapport, and he and I would talk about music, and I was always excited about music and always in record stores buying records and wanting to go to shows. So at one point, he's like, I think I want this guy to be my assistant. So he went to Arnie and Jerry and said, what do you think about taking this guy out of this radio show of yours and letting him work for me? They said, you know what? If you want to talk to him about it, great. So he asked me if I'd like to learn about the real business of jam, what they actually do. And I said, yeah, sure. So he started bringing me to shows, and I learned how to settle a show and how to run a show from beginning to end. We did that for a while. And then after probably about 6 or 8 months of doing that, and they would send me, it's funny, they would send me to like all the markets they didn't want to settle shows in. They'd send me to Omaha or wherever, these hinterland markets to do stuff. And then like
Davenport.
Yeah, right. Then all the shows Scotty didn't want to settle at, at Metro. And
you got the leftovers.
Yeah, it was funny, but it was cool because it was exciting to me. I'd never done that before. It was pretty cool. And like I said, after about 6 to 9 months or so, he went to those guys and said, I want to pull this guy out of the radio thing all the way and like make him my assistant. Is that okay? And they were like, yeah, sure, if he wants to do it. So that's how I ended up doing this. And I was Scotty's assistant probably for about a year or a year and a half. And then at about the beginning of 1989, Fred Ordauer had left the company. He was kind of the guy who worked right under Arnie and Jerry. So they moved Scotty into his position doing arenas and theaters, and they made me the head of the department, the club department, and I've been doing it ever since.
So your entire career is pretty much after college based at this one company.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Well, I've been offered jobs elsewhere, but I just didn't want to leave.
Are you allowed to leave the Jewish American Mafia? What does it stand for? Jerry and Arnie's money. I've heard both.
I guess it's a lot of things.
I actually think I heard both from Jerry.
Yeah, probably.
I like Jerry and Arnie's money. I think that one's the best. That's my favorite.
Yeah, definitely. I've been asked to work at a label. I've been asked to work at different promoters and kind of thought, why would I want to leave here? I run the department. They gave me the department basically and said, go get them. They weren't asking me to approve offers or anything. I just went and did it. And if I wanted to go into a small building, I didn't have to ask anybody. I just went into a small building. And one of the cool things we did while I was kind of running that is not long after I took over the department, Ron Stern, who was our head of production at the time, asked Andy Surzan and I if I would meet his buddy, Chris Schuba, and go take a meeting with him because he owned this bar, Schuba's, which I used to go to and see rock shows for years. It used to be called gas bars. I used to live around the corner from it. I was like, yeah, I've maybe only been in there once since it changed. I'm like, yeah, I'll meet him. So Andy and I went and had a couple beers with Chris Schuba at his place. And, we were like, he's like, I want someone to book this place. I know Arnie and Jerry and I know Ron, and would you guys do this? And Andy's like, I don't really do this, but he does. So I was like, yeah, I love this place. I'll totally start doing it. So started booking shows there, and then any other small place I wanted to go into. Started doing shows at Cubby Bear, started doing shows at Exit.
How often do you do a show at Cubby Bear? This is back in the day.
This is back in the day. We got kicked out of there in 1991. They kicked us out.
They don't do a lot of music anymore, right? Unless it's like an after free show.
They do some stuff there, some national touring stuff. I think they do some cover bands. I haven't really watched their calendar too much, but they totally remodeled the place since I was doing shows there. But the cool thing is I was able to kind of expand into all these other little rooms, and that kind of became the order of the day. Start as small as possible and develop. As small as possible used to be the Park West or the Metro, but when I kind of took over, we made it, let's start from zero.
You want to have first dibs and you want to keep them and try and just be in there.
Well, not only that, all that stuff is more exciting. Bands at the very beginning, that's cool. That's why when they asked me, do you want to do, they asked me at Jam, do you want to move up? Do you want to do arenas and stuff? I was like, no. Why would I want to do that? To me, that would be kind of boring.
So when your acts move up that you've developed through the Metro and the Vic and the Riv, at a certain point, do they hand up to Andy or somebody else because they do those deals?
Yep, exactly.
It doesn't matter that you have the long relationship with the agent or whatever. You would pass that up to the other guys.
Yeah. And for a while, I had certain bands were like, well, we want you involved. You've been our guy. And I'd be like, you know what? You're in good hands with, Don Sullivan at the time or Andy Surzan, these guys are great. They're going to do it. And if you need me, I'm here.
You got calendars to fill, so you're focused on that.
Yeah. And just, obviously there's so much more volume at the small level than the large level. So
you got a full day one way or another. Who are you really excited about that's coming through that it's more than you just bought them? You can't wait to see them.
I'm very excited that I'm doing a show with Parquet Courts, who I've wanted to do a show with for a long time, and we're finally going to do that. I'm excited about Courtney Barnett, who I've done a couple shows with, and I love her. She's great. We have a show with The coming up, who...
Amazing reunion.
Well, reunion. It's really Matt and whoever else he's playing with, but...
Yeah, but Geiger got Matt to work.
Yeah, very excited about that. I'll be talking with friends. I swear I'll be working on almost 100 shows. And they'll be like, what are you working on? And I just kind of look at them and go, almost too many to think of one. But I'm excited about those things coming up. I'm sure many others that I'm not even thinking about at this moment.
Your process of just the serious volume that you guys are constantly turning through to keep those rooms filled, but also creating not just content for the rooms, but creating what's some of the coolest stuff to play any calendar, because you look at your calendars and it's always cutting edge and cool. You guys do a great job with that.
Well, thanks. It's all stuff we're excited about.
Where are you going to research your acts? Is that South by Trips? Is that Pitchfork? Where are you studying up?
It used to be CMJ and South by Southwest. Unfortunately, there is no more CMJ, which I'm very bummed out about. And if the people doing that Mondo NYC thing get it together, I would happily go to that. But, I haven't seen that thing really take off yet. I read magazines. I listen to music online. Just kind of look around at stuff and figure stuff out and look at other rooms that are maybe smaller than us or rooms we're not doing shows in and see who's playing there. And I check out their music and see what that's all about.
You guys are a monster firm where you have different departments to handle things. So when you book a show, you're not necessarily doing the marketing unless there's a problem. I'm sure you get involved at that point, but you guys have a marketing department, right? That usually once it's booked, you would hand it off to that side of the company.
Yes. We have a marketing department that is two guys. One guy who does the theaters and arenas, and the other guy is a one-man gang named John Bell, who does all of our shows at the club level.
You've got two guys that do all the marketing for all of Jam shows?
Yes.
How the
wait, I take that back. No, and there's Mike Linsky also who does secondary market stuff.
There's two guys that do everything
in Chicago.
And then one guy that focuses on anything that you guys do outside.
Yes. No interns, no assistants.
Okay, still three guys for, let's call it roughly 1,000 shows a year. That's fucking insane.
Yeah.
Does this guy sleep?
I don't know. They sleep. I know. Amazing. I wake up a lot in the middle of the night going, did I do that? Oh.
Well, it's amazing because, it's a time and a point where you pick up the reader. I remember 25 years ago, it'd be about getting the show confirmed so we could get it in before print deadline so we could break the show on Wednesday or Thursday when the reader came out, right? Or Village Voice or Westward or LA Weekly, whatever, wherever you're at. But it was all about the weekly, and that was the Bible. We'd all pick it up to see what our competitors got and find out what the agents never released before it confirmed. It's
right.
Just like those things. But now you pick up those papers, and they're really, really thin, and we don't have any budget for them. Everything's been moved online. But it's kind of changed that whole thing of where money's being spent. It's I can't even remember the last time somebody said they'd co-op an ad with the record store for the show.
Well, they don't have any money to do that stuff anymore. All they do now is glom onto your show with a $4.50 bundle, as an by the way.
It's amazing how they never announce
you put the show on sale.
Did we forget to tell you?
Oh, I just want to mention one thing. There's a $5 bundle now on this show that you completely maxed out the ticket price for us. Oh,
it's fine though. Everybody wants the new music.
The ticket price was, when we wanted to raise it $1, it wasn't okay. But now that the record company's sticking $5 on it, it's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, you guys can't tax that. I think the city's going to have a problem with that. I think we're going to have to.
Oh, yeah. Well, they bake it into the ticket price, so we don't have a choice.
Right. But I think it's amazing. They like to tell you that you can't tax what is them collecting money. And it's I think the state's going to have an issue with that.
Yeah, I just cross that out.
I think that's always fun. We know the rules. And I think probably they push through a lot of people with, it's not taxable. It's you're going to find a penitentiary one day, sir.
It used to be, well, depending on what venue you play here, it's less than the sales tax, so can't complain too much.
Can't hate that. In your eyes, what's the future of the business? Where's it going?
Wow. I don't know. I hope my future is intact. Obviously, there's just more and more on the road. There are more bands, there are more artists, there's more subgenres of music. I hope it just continues to expand, and we have, lots of great music and great shows to put on.
You guys have an interesting thing because it's often been talked about that there's Jerry's side of the business and then there's the Arnie side that they focus on different things. They don't necessarily cross-contaminate. And I believe your side of the building is more of a Jerry side focused on the rock shows, right?
Not really. What happens is it's kind of like a three-way system where, at least this is my view of it. I've been there for a few years, so I hope this is accurate. The glove department's where everything starts, and when it leaves, it either goes to Arnie's side or Jerry's side, depending on who the agent and or the manager is. They have some arcane system of dividing.
There really is no diagram to it. It's a relationship based thing.
Yeah, well, the diagram's kind of changed as players have changed. If so-and-so has been the manager forever and then it became someone else's, client at management, it might go from one side to the other. So
Okay, so let's make Straight No Chaser the example. When they were playing the smaller rooms, you were doing it. And then at some point, since Arnie has a relationship with David Bretz, that would have just gone that way most likely.
But it didn't. Actually, I don't know why it went to the Jerry side. Jerry and Ron can probably explain that better than me.
So even in the example I came up with,
right, exactly. There you go. Arcane system.
It's funny. It is really funny because David and Arnie are certainly like the buddies of the two. Before I let you go, do you have any advice for the guys coming up in the industry?
My advice for you, if you're coming up in the industry and you want to be an agent, is go try and promote a couple of shows before you become an agent. I think that would really, really help your view of how it works and maybe give you a little bit more well-rounded experience. I think some agents probably came from that background, maybe even whether it's a college program or something where they did stuff on campus. But I think that if you're going to be in the agency business, it would be a really great idea to try and, if you have this thought that you want to do it and you're young enough, try and promote your own show somewhere or try and figure out how that works. I think there's a lot of people in the business who don't see the other side or understand the other side quite as much. And I think the more well-rounded you are, listen to me talking, it's the only job I've ever had. How well-rounded am I? But I think being well-rounded is probably a really beneficial thing for everybody, for you as an agent or a manager, or having insight into what your acts deal with. So
thank you so much for taking time.
Wow, you're very welcome. This is fun. Thanks, Dan.
The legendary Nick Miller in the house.
Legend in his own mind.
Nick has been a staple of the Chicagoland area for decades now. He could write a book about talent buying, and I think everyone should buy it if he ever does. Stoked we got him on the podcast.
This fall, coming to a conference near you. Two legends meet face to face.
Activists Bernie Cahill, Emporium presents Dan Steinberg, Billboard Live.
Bernie Cahill here. I'll be doing the keynote with Dan Steinberg at Billboard Live, Montage, Beverly Hills, November 13th.
Got some birthdays this week, Dan. September 7th to the 13th, 2018.
Friday the 7th, the king of ska, Mr. Rick Bondi, Michael Solomon, and road manager extraordinaire, Scott Cannon.
On Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to DSB's, Dan Smalls, Tim Sweetwood, and Michael Morris.
Sunday, celebrity accents, Joe Reinert and Gabe Silva.
On Monday, got to wish a happy birthday to my teammate from Works Entertainment, Constance Torres, Jill Wheeler, Peter Davis, Jonathan Ramos, the manager extraordinaire, Nick Lippman, and tour manager to Home Free, Jenica Faust.
Tuesday, 9/11, Paul Emery, Scott Giampino, Ben Lee, and the great mammoth promoter, Jeff Fortier.
On Wednesday, wishing a happy birthday to Kevin Brady, Mike Palm, Ross Dupree, and Ben Spritz.
Thursday, 9/13, Steve Ozark, ICM's Mike Hayes, and the legendary agent, Corey Christopher.
Happy birthday to everybody from the gang here at Promoter 101.
Hi, it's Kira Finkenberg. I'm the marketing and ticketing guru for Andy Hewitt and Bill Silva Presents. I'm on Promoter 101.
That's it. That'll do it. Promoter 101, episode 99, in the bag. We want to know what you thought today. Send us an email. Hit us both at steiny@promoter101.net.
Quote of the week comes to us from Jerry Seinfeld. Most successful artists are not the most talented, but they want to be more than anyone else. Little bit of Jew wisdom there from the great Jerry Seinfeld.
We're going to be back next week. We got a very special episode 100, holy shit, of Promoter 101.
100. Wow, Luke, I would have thought that we would have been canceled by 100. I mean, how are we not?
I don't know. Every week, Standards and Practices somehow just tells us the show has to go on.
Standards and Practices. Clearly, which is at some point you and me looking at Connor saying, oh shit, we probably can't say that without getting in trouble.
Yeah,
cut that.
Cut that.
By the way, a little Promoter 101 insight for our nerd listeners of how we do the podcast. There isn't an episode where we don't have that 7 times. We're like, oh, fuck. Connor, don't put that out there. And Connor saves our ass.
Everything we've said for the last 6 minutes, just don't air that to anybody. So a lot of those days.
Yeah, today it was a political rant that we were both like, oh, maybe not.
Yeah.
But hey, we'll be back with episode 100. It's a special episode. So instead of our normal interviews, we got some new... I don't want to ruin it, but it's an all-star episode. It's amazing. And so many of our friends are going to be around next week for that episode.
Absolutely, Dan. Going to be a ton of surprises.
But until then, as always, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the weeks to come.
Cheers.
Motherfuckers.
Hi, I'm Holly Gleason, editor of Women Walk the Line, here at Promoter 101, where they know how to get it done.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da.